Welcome to Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I am Lilia Francisconi.
And I'm Mary Lee Moulton. We're members of the League and your hosts for this show on the 2020 census. Each program, we talk about important public policy issues, and we hope you'll discuss these issues, and at election time, you'll be ready and willing to go vote.
Our guests today are Hannah Young. She is a Public Policy and Strategic Partnership Manager for Nonprofit Association of the Midlands, and Heather Ingle from City, Nebraska. She is the new director of the Nebraska Count.
Okay. Hannah and Heather, you were part of the Nebraska Complete Count Committee. What can you tell us about the committee and what the committee is doing and why you're doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take this one. So this committee formed roughly about a year ago. We at first initially just wanted to help with what we thought would be the State Complete Count Commission that is directed by the governor or the state legislature. However, when that got vetoed, we realized there would not be a statewide effort for the census, so we decided to complete our own. So that is how Nebraska Counts got started. It is a statewide committee of nonprofits who are working to make sure we're getting the count out in 2020.
So let's start with the basics. Why do we have a census?
Yeah, so the goal of the census is to figure out who is in the United States at a point in time. That point in time is April 1st. So whoever is physically here on April 1st should be counted in the census. It happens every 10 years. It's called the decennial census, and it basically just tells us who's here, and it allocates a lot of different things, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit.
And why is it required?
Yeah, so it's required by the Constitution, and it's basically, and pretty easy just to know who's here and how many people are here and where they're at, and just to get patterns and migration statuses throughout the United States.
And what does the government do with the data collected from the census?
So various things. So this is how we get a lot of our federal funding through the state. This is how we decide who representatives and who redistricting and how all of that works, how many federal representatives you get per state. It shows just who is where, and so where are certain people at and where they have come and where they go. So all kinds of things.
And what is the total amount of the federal aid received by Nebraska subject to the accuracy of the data that is collected during the census?
Yeah, so the total amount of the aid, we're looking at a lot of money here. So in federal funding, nearly $4 billion of federal funding allocated, and it also is impacting the state funding and even local level funding. And again, this is based on the population counts in these different areas.
So how many federal programs that disperse funds use the census data, and can you give us some examples of the kinds of programs that use the data?
Absolutely. So we're looking at nearly 55 federal funding programs. Some examples of those, funding for roads and highways, our schools, our hospitals, our emergency services, and those public assistance programs, SNAP and Head Start. Really a lot of those programs that affect our daily lives.
Now, it's not just the government who benefits from this information that is collected, but also, can you tell us how the businesses will benefit or will use this data?
Yep, so businesses can use this data to see where people are at, so it might help them open up so we have a new prospective business who doesn't know what part of town maybe that they want to go to. If they know a certain demographic of people are located in a certain part of town, they might open up. It could flip side that, they could close a business if they're not realizing they're not targeting the people, or they might relocate, but they really use that data to see who is where and where their business would best be fit.
And can you talk a little more about how the census impacts redistricting in Nebraska, because that's a very hot topic right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So Nebraska will most likely not gain or lose a representative. It's pretty well known. We would have to have a crazy amount, either answer or not answer. But what it does do is it changes the lines. So after every 10 years, after every census, we get a redistricting. So where our representatives are might change. That line will change based on population, so they need to be even. So that could cut out maybe a part of a census district right now, or a representative's district right now. So it'll kind of ebb and flow every 10 years as that goes. So yes, we're not opposed to lose or gain one, but it is very important where we draw these redistricting lines.
Okay. So now let's shift to specific questions people have about the census. Let's get a big one out of the way, which is, will there be a question about citizenship? Because that was a very contentious issue going into the census.
Yep. I think both of our organizations took a stance on this when it was, kind of happening in 2018, that the citizenship question was not needed, and we are very happy to report that it will not be in there. So it'll be the 9 original questions posed without a citizenship question. So that's something we really consider a win. We understand, why that's important, but it's not important in the census. That's kind of meant for other kind of survey distribution.
Okay.
And what are the questions?
Yep.
Yeah, so to run through the questions that are on the census questionnaire itself, the first question is the number of people in the household, and that is the overall goal of the census. Each survey that is documented, it's serving that purpose to get that head count, and then each question from there on details each person in the household. So it also asks just general questions about your household, if it's an apartment, a house, or a mobile home, and it does ask for your phone number. Then going into each person, it asks for name, gender, age and birth date, and then it does ask about race and Hispanic origin, ethnicity, and then it just goes on for each person in your household. So it's pretty quick and to the point. Again, we're glad that the citizenship question is not on the census in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. So historically, households receive the census in the mail, and this is going to change with the 2020 census. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yep. So this will be the first year it'll be done digitally. So in the middle of March, you will get a postcard in the mail that has your unique identifier, and that is how you can log in and take the census right then. So as soon as you get your postcard in the mail, we are really encouraging people to take it right then, right there. You can't forget if you do it right away. I know personally, mail tends to get lost in my house, so we're hoping you get your census document in the mail. You go, you make sure it has that .gov address on it, and as long as it does, then you go ahead and you can do it that way. If you don't feel comfortable doing that for any way, they will eventually call you, and then you can do it over the phone. You can also, there will also be a number on the postcard you can call. If both of those don't happen, you will get the physical census in the mail like you previously had gotten if you had filled it out. And if you don't respond to that, then you will have an enumerator come to your door. And really hoping, no one wants anyone to come to the door most likely anyway, and it costs the government a lot of money. So we're really hoping to avoid that by doing it via online, phone, or mailing it back in.
Okay.
And what if somebody doesn't have access to the computer or a smartphone?
That's totally fine. They can call, if they can use the number and call, or we have a great partnership with the local libraries. They can go to the local library and take it there, and they will have some kind of frequently asked questions and help there.
Okay. And what if people do have other questions when they're home on their computer? How would they get help with those questions? Will there be something online, or will there be a number that they can call?
Yeah, so that same number is the assistance line for the census. So there'll be a lot of different options a person can select when they do call in for the various reasons. And then there also are different assistance windows for the online completions of the census. And additionally, we hope to be present in the libraries on certain days, hosting events, to be there to answer questions as they come up. When I learned that we're able to do that and answer questions and help guide people through the census, that was really huge for us, because I really see this as being a first time in history to really make this more of a social duty instead of individualized. And I think that we'll come out in great, strong numbers by doing so. And then also, I just want to mention that the Census Bureau has publicized that they will have Braille and large print options available online for access, and there also will be enumerators that will be able to use American Sign Language for folks that would need that accessibility to the census.
Okay, that's great.
And you have mentioned two concepts that I'd like to clarify. What is the head of the household?
So I'll take that one. I looked into this quite a bit when I was learning more about the terms that we use with the census. And so I was interested to learn that they call it the householder. And so instead of the traditional term of head of household that we associate with our taxes and our other important documents, the householder is the person or the adult that fills out the census, and it can be any adult in the household. It doesn't have to be the head, according to the tax forms. And it's really important that the householder completes just one census to keep everything accurate.
Okay. So if you're not the head of, or not the householder, how do you know that you've been counted? Are you just going to assume that everyone, that whoever's filling out the form is doing it correctly, or?
That's a really good question, and that's really going to be a challenge all the way through. The Census Bureau and our group, we're really working to not only work for a complete count, but an accurate count. And so I would just really highlight the communication within the household. If you're an adult that has completed the census, just letting everybody else know. For example, when I was a college student and hearing about this coming up, having a household of students that might be on the go and not as communicative as other households or families, they might complete it together. And so then everybody's kind of on board, even answering their questions if they're person one or person two. And so the main important thing here is that each person that you go through on the survey and describe, you'll just need to make sure to identify what relationship that person has to the person filling out the census.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a great opportunity if you've got kids to sit down with them and do it together so that they can see what it's like.
Absolutely, and I'd really encourage that. I really feel strongly about encouraging the leadership in our youth and educating them on our civic duties and really promoting the civic engagement.
Everybody at the dinner time at one time that day.
Yeah. I think one important note is that if for some reason two people fill it out, the Census Bureau will notice that, it'll get flagged, and then they'll come back. So while we don't want that, it's not like we'll get a double count. So, but that just puts more effort on the Census Bureau later, and they'll have to come back and reach out.
Only one person will write down the answers in the whole form, even for other people.
Yep, it doesn't matter how many people, you have one person who fills it out and turns it back in. Yep, so if there's some reason double though, it will get figured out eventually, but it would just be easier to do it right the first time, I think, for the Census Bureau.
Now, who are most undercounted groups in the census, and why are you advocating to make sure that those undercounted groups are counted?
Absolutely. So the most undercounted historically would be the group of children under 5, and there's a variety of reasons for that. And many other undercounted groups, including those that are experiencing homelessness, minorities, elderly, and really anybody living in group quarters are at risk of being undercounted. Group quarters can include school dorms, nursing homes, hospitals, shelters, and a variety of forms of group housing. But we are especially advocating for our new Americans, our refugee and immigrant populations, those that might speak other languages, and we have a variety of other languages in our communities that we're working with to really make sure we can connect them with the resources they need.
Can you talk a little bit more about why it is that children under 5 seem not to be counted?
Absolutely. So there's quite a few reasons. I would say the most prominent ones, sometimes when we have joint custodies and split households, and sometimes we also have families where grandparents contribute to caring for children. And so it really factors into when children's time is spent in more than one home. And that's an increasing thing that we have. I know I grew up with a lot of family members, a lot of homes that I would consider, I stayed there a lot. And so just considering that as being a huge factor for that. And I would shout out to the Census Bureau has a really useful fact sheet that kind of breaks down different reasons that they've also experienced for that.
Now, if a child lives out of town like a college student, but if they're supported by the family, do they count as part of the household?
So this is a really good question, and it has come up a lot before. Essentially, it just is all about where that student is living on April 1st. And so again, kind of going back to the tax forms and considering being a dependent may be still part of the household in that way, it's really understandable that this can get confusing, but just highlighting that April 1st is Census Day, it's Reference Day, and so it would really come down to having still been in school in April, on April 1st, they would then be counted in their college town where they live.
So are the colleges themselves going to kind of take this on as like sending it to them and saying, remember, you know, you got this card, today everybody is going to do the census?
Yeah, so we've,
No, go ahead.
We've been working with quite a few of the schools. It's going really well. The group quarters include the dorms, and so students living on campus will be counted with the administration's response to the census in that way. But we're really working with those off-campus students because it can get very confusing with the lack of information there. And so the universities have been really, really great in joining the partnership and contributing to advocating for those.
So the universities are going to act as head of household, basically, and they're going to count all of these kids themselves?
So in a sense, they are considered group quarters, and so that process has already started where the U.S. Census Bureau is working really closely with the group quarters. And so yes, in a way, it would be a large-scale census response, but it would be based on any students that are living on campus in the dorms that are counted as a resident of the campus, so yes.
And we have, you know, international students that come, and if they are here for school but their home is in another country, how does it get counted?
Yes, they are counted here. Anybody and everybody that is physically here on April 1st and living here, they're counted. So citizenship, status, travel, all of those things set aside. It is just a head count of everybody physically in our space.
Somebody's going through the airport on April 1st and they are transferring it.
It's supposed to be where you're living the majority of the time on April 1st.
Oh, the majority of the time.
Yep, so that's where the college thing comes in. Yes, they might go home or whatever, but they're, 9 months out of the year generally, they are living on that college campus, so they are counted as that resident of that, which is confusing because I would still think I would live at home, especially like freshman, sophomore year of college, but nope, you are a resident of that city if you are. Or that state.
So let's talk a little bit about if a census worker comes to your home. Do you show an ID? Do they show an ID? Do they come in? How does that all work?
Yep, so if an enumerator comes to your door, they will just knock on your door and they will have an ID. They will have their certification that says they're with the Census Bureau. And you just would answer their questions like you would online or via phone. There is absolutely no reason that you need an ID. There's no reason, you don't need an ID if you're filling it out online, so you wouldn't need an ID if they come to your door. They will just be there to physically ask you these questions instead of you writing them down. So it really is just easier for everyone if hopefully everyone can do it either via mail, online, or through the phone.
And could you define enumerator?
An enumerator is a Census Bureau worker who will come to your door. So they're just
Census
it's just
taker?
what they it's
Census
just,
taker,
yep,
yes.
that's all they are. They give them a
Alright.
fancy name and they call them enumerators. Yep, so they
Now, is there any penalties if somebody refuses to answer the census?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, it is in the Constitution, and so it is constitutionally mandated, as they call it. And so there are fines, $100 to $500 fines, depending on the case. And I will say that is kind of a case-by-case manner that is handled by the justice system.
So what about security with the census? How does the Census Bureau combat identity fraud and scams? How are we sure that this information that we're getting, that we're giving them is going to be secure?
Yep. This is obviously very important to the Census Bureau. It's also going to be the first time we've done it online, so cybersecurity is obviously an issue. The best we can say is we're really hoping for the best. It's been being tested for a couple years now, so it's not like it's not new. The website's not new, so we are very confident in that. Security-wise, this has been going on since the 1700s, so it's well established, and we're really confident that the Census Bureau knows what they're doing. This is their, one big job. So we're really confident that they would do. They're also bound by law to not only not discuss what they've found with other people, but other agencies. So the Census Bureau cannot give out any information to other government agencies as well as individuals. There's a pretty hefty fine. They take an oath when they agree to work with the census. So it's something we're feeling very confident about.
And I would just add, in addition to the fine, there's prison time there too.
Yeah.
And are there certain things that are tip-offs that if somebody's asking you for, say, your social security number or something like that, that a red flag should go up?
Absolutely.
These 9 questions that Heather talked about is all they should ask you.
Okay.
So no matter if they come to your door or anything, that's it. And you can also call that number on the postcard or call the Census Bureau and ask if someone should be at your door, and they will know if whoever's supposed to be in your area then. So there's a lot of ways to, negate, which is very which is great. And we hope that people take that up if they ever feel like uncomfortable or they don't feel like something's right. They should only be asking those basic 9 questions.
Okay.
Now, when will the census result be announced? When are we knowing that?
So the process, there's a couple months after July where the quality assurance period begins and takes place. December 31st is when the results are delivered to the president. And then going from there, a couple months into the year is when we'll actually see what has come from the census results.
So we have to wait until 2021?
Yeah,
We do.
Yes.
So you talk about having these 9 short questions, but there's also something that people used to be called the long form, be called the American Community Survey. Can you talk a little about that, and is that also mandatory if you get it? Do you have to answer the questions?
So it's the same. It's now called the ACS, or American Community Survey, and it is the long version. Like you said, it could take up to an hour to fill out. This should take you less than 5 to 10 minutes. So that is demographic information. That's more in the weeds, your income, your very specific questions about households, and that is surveyed 10% of the population each year. So after 10 years, everyone should have gotten it, but it's just a population sample. So that will also be going on at the same time. As far as I know, they
But that's
haven't
ongoing.
paused
Every
it.
single year,
Every
10%
single
of the
year.
population
Yep,
is
10%.
doing that.
Yep,
Okay,
so
that's
that's
good to know.
continuous. So that if people say, well, I already took the census, before now, no one has taken the census before now unless they live in Alaska. So we're just kind of reiterating that, yes, was it a longer form? Like, how long did it take you? How many questions were they? And also reiterating that it's not going to take you an hour. It should take you very minimal amount of time.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the committee that you've put together, the organizations that are working with you, and some of the other complete count committees that we have in Nebraska.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 3 kind of founding members of Nebraska Counts were Nonprofit Association of the Midlands, Civic Nebraska, and Nebraska Civic Engagement Table. So that was the 3 of us who came together around this time last year and really decided something needed to take place, needed to happen. It was our duty as nonprofits to really step up to the table and make this work. So after that, we kind of started recruiting a smaller group of nonprofits who wanted to be the steering committee and really wanted to gather more information and get this ball rolling. Now we have over 50 nonprofits involved at different levels. So we have a steering committee that's really trying to navigate higher level aspects of the census, but then we have people on our subcommittees that are done geographically. So we have based on congressional districts. So we have a CD1, CD2, and CD3 subcommittees who are working on seeing who is working in these areas and what they're doing. That way we're not duplicating efforts. They're also, those people, the heads of those committees, are also working with their local complete count committees. So for example, I lead Omaha, so I also sit on the Omaha Complete Count Committee. So that makes sure that we're not duplicating efforts, no one's getting missed, because that's what we don't want to happen.
Now, there are certain areas that we know really do get undercounted. Can you talk a little about how you identify those areas and kind of more the extraordinary efforts that go into making sure they get counted?
Absolutely. So to give a little bit of context, the Census Bureau has what's called the low response score, the LRS, and this is a percentage of a given population of a census tract that is expected to not respond to the census. So the larger that score, the more at risk that tract is of being undercounted. And so that's the tool that we use to identify where we would target. We knew that we wanted to do this work. We knew it was important statewide, but we also knew that we had to be really strategic and really target those hard to count communities. And so by doing that, we identified 30 census tracts across the state in 10 counties that had the highest LRS scores. And so by doing that, we were able to zone in on where we can really funnel in this targeted outreach and make the most difference. And so by doing that, we have a few different plans. Most importantly, is our canvassing. So we'll be going door to door and phone banking, just really trying to have that one-on-one engagement with folks to really deliver the information, answer any questions that they might have, and also highlighting that we have plans for social events, small group gatherings, small dinners, to highlight the importance of the variety of types of ways that people really feel best about engaging, and really highlighting that we really want to meet people where they're at. And the nonprofits that we partner with serve their communities across the state day in, day out. And so really, really strengthening that connection that's already existing and those trusted voices that already exist to really bridge those gaps and reach those places.
And what do you find when you get some opposition, when you go into those communities? What are you hearing from people who, historically have not filled out the census before?
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of government distrust out here, and that's going to be the big thing that the Census Bureau has identified as being a barrier here. There's a variety of reasons for that that we don't need to go into, but I think that fear, there's a climate of reluctance and fear of not knowing for certain, what the questions will be, not knowing the details that Census Bureau workers will have identification to confirm that they are a census taker. And just that overall worry of the safety of their information, that privacy and confidentiality that is ensured, but understandably there's questions about that and concerns about that.
Okay.
And we have heard a lot about the jobs, inviting people to apply. Can you still apply for a job with the census?
Yes, absolutely. They are still hiring. I encourage everybody to go onto their website, census.gov, 2020census.gov, and inquire on that. They are still accepting that, and they are really trying to hire a lot more people.
They will place you in your neighborhood most likely too. They really want people from the neighborhood doing the door knocking and those being those enumerators. So it's a really good part-time job too. They offer night and weekend hours because that's typically when people are home. So it's a really good job for people who might just want a little extra income. There's also full-time work available, but it's kind of both, and there's a lot of opportunities left.
And will that basically, you think, kind of help having people who look like the community knocking on the door will probably, get a better result?
Yep,
absolutely. And we hope to serve very complimentary to the Census Bureau, doing very educational outreach on the front end of things to prompt neighborhoods and community members to be expecting all of this.
Okay.
Well, this is great. You have another question?
Yeah, any final kind of parting words as far as getting people excited about the census and making sure they're ready, set, go on April 1st?
We're hoping that by April 1st, everyone has already taken the census. Make our jobs a lot easier, and the census jobs a lot easier. I really want people to be excited and really see this as a civic duty, just like voting, and it's something you should be excited about because we really, really only benefit from people filling out the census.
Right, and the more people who fill it out in Nebraska, the more things we will, funds we will get back for Nebraskans. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, Hannah, Heather, thank you very much for being with us, discussing these important topics about the census. My name is Lilia Francisconi.
And I'm Mary Lee Moulton for the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. We hope that you've enjoyed the program, and when it comes time, we hope you will go vote Omaha. Thanks very much.